Oh, hey, welcome to the Tendo Show. We are going to have a conversation today about the post-COVID world that we're currently finding ourselves in. Hopefully, it'll be a lighthearted conversation. I just want to talk about some interesting things I've experienced that have changed since pre-COVID, and we'll maybe have a discourse about whether or not some of these things will ever go back or if they're now permanent. So before we get started with today's episode, drop a comment below and just comment and tell us the most obvious thing that you've noticed that's been different since the before times, as I like to call them. Stick around, guys. Okay, Hannah, what do you think off the top of your head has sparked this conversation in my mind?
I would say probably your obsession with cards at the moment.
I honestly didn't expect you to get that right, but yes, absolutely. Today and the last several weeks, really, I've been taking our other channel, Rubber Duck Yellow, as serious as I ever have, and doing some live streams and just trying to get back into the swing of my Pokemon collecting and stuff. And I think this is a really great way to start out this conversation because I'll tell you the worst thing that COVID did to us personally, and I aim to make no comparison to anyone else's experience, but for us, the worst thing that happened was we started our other channel, and it was killing it.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and it was kind of like, well, what do we do now? That was kind of a bummer. Or didn't go exactly like that. Maybe we kind of started a little bit after COVID. I really don't remember now, but at any rate, it was the wrong time in this COVID era to have this channel because it's so trading card centric.
Yeah.
And the supply chain of such things was just eradicated.
It was wild because whenever we started that channel, we went to the store, we bought some Pokemon cards, and we're like, all right, this is cool. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And then it was like the next set came out, and we're like, there's no way we're going to get this. It's just not possible. And then from there on, it just got harder and harder.
And even today, now it's 2001, just for the sake of posterity here, as of shooting this, it is Friday, August 13th, 2001. So
2021.
What did I say? 2001?
2001.
I don't belong on the internet. It feels like 2001 because that's about the time I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh. Yes, it is 2021. How many times did I say it was 2001?
Just twice.
Like 6 times? It's odd. And you know, I every time I bring this up, somebody has an argument, like a different take on it. Like, oh, it's not supply chain issues. It's like I remember getting an argument with one guy on the internet, which you should never do.
Yeah, don't engage.
He said his argument was like, it's not supply chain, it's supply and demand. And I was like, exactly.
That's part. Supply chain is part of that.
Yeah, but it's really just a kind of a difference of, it's a mincing of words and stuff kind of thing. But yes, we're in a world that because we were all locked down and got back into a hobby, the demand for that kind of thing skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And man, it's just it's a bummer, but then it's not because I personally, I like to be into hobbies that a huge swath of people are into.
Yeah.
I find it preferable. I like playing video games that everyone's playing at the same time. I like the community aspect of those things. And Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, these things can have really large communities built up around them. But I think this really introduces a much larger conversation, right? Because I think we could probably spend the rest of the day talking about the minute ways in which every industry and any hobby you could probably be into has kind of changed. Do you think of anything off the top of your head that's just way different?
I mean, the one that's most closest to me is the clothing industry. That is what I focus all of my time on. But I mean, during lockdown, the idea of like going to stores just wasn't gonna happen. So the clothing industry focused a lot more on online selling, way more than it already had been. And because of that, the used clothing market, I feel, really thrived during that time.
Right.
So that's like my biggest takeaway from the whole thing is that like the online clothing used market is just kind of doing good now.
It got a huge boost from it.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting thing because, you know, there's a lot of people that I've ran into. I'll tell you what, every day since lockdown lifted here for us, I have had an encounter with someone where COVID has come up, and I think I'm very happy to record this podcast because one day I think in the same way that like our video coming out tomorrow, I find newspapers from 9/11, right?
Yeah.
There's just a very specific way in which people our age were so heavily affected by that. We still, multiple times a year, have conversations about what it was like on September 11th, 2001.
Yeah.
That was actually 2001.
I was like, that's where you're getting 2001 from.
Yeah, maybe that was in the back of my head. So similarly, right now, as you would probably expect, because I think I've heard someone make this kind of an analogy like that, this is this generation's September 11th, which is to say it's just the major world event that affected everyone.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I've heard maybe some news people say that kind of thing, and I get it because kids that are supposed to be graduating high school this year or last, like forever are going to be, that's going to be part of the conversation. Oh, what year did you graduate? The kid says 2020 or 2021.
People are going to be like,
oh, you're one of those. Or even more so, probably even worse, if you're born this year, 20 years from now, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
You're going to get all the jokes about being a COVID baby, And that's funny. But what I'm getting at is just, it's so interesting. Every day, I almost forget. I'm a very linear person, and I'm like, we got to go get this stuff done. So I'm not walking around thinking about COVID. But I can't tell you how often I'm just talking to some new person, whether it be some of you guys that come up to us in public, or sometimes it's, just some random person checking me out, ringing my items up at a grocery store or something, and they bring up something, and I'm just like, man, that doesn't surprise me because I know what COVID world we live in is, but I'm surprised in those moments that the new thing that affected this person's life that just wouldn't have occurred to me.
Yeah.
Right. Because most of the people that are going to hear my story outside of our channel are going to be like, oh, you resold garbage and now you're doing a lot better because of COVID.
Yeah.
That's weird. So every day I have one of these interactions, and it's just either entirely positive or entirely negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because we all know the negative stuff, people losing their jobs, et cetera, et cetera. But because of what we do and because of who we are on the internet, I'd say about half of those conversations are people telling us, because we watch your channel and Rick's channel and some of these other people's channel, COVID actually kind of worked out for us because we lost our jobs, which finally pushed us into reselling, which we were thinking about doing for a long time, but now we had to, and it's just been marvelous. That's a positive interaction we get.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something else that I've noticed, and it's probably just because this is our world and people share that kind of thing with us because they know that that's what we do too, is that people have now gotten deeper into side hustles and like, I need to have a backup plan in case my job falls through because, we could have a pandemic and I could lose my job again and I could be, without.
Yeah. And it's every day though, right? Like how many times have you heard me tell someone, I mean, I'm almost really practiced at it where I just say, man, I'm not surprised that happened, but I'm not in your industry, so I never would have thought of that.
Right.
One nice gentleman we met at a Goodwill way on the other side of town works for the Major League Baseball. I don't remember. I do remember. He worked for the Athletics, for the A's. If you're a baseball person, comment below. Are they still technically the Athletics, or do we just go straight A's now? I don't know, actually. But he was affected and laid off, and there were other things that in this conversation of having with this particular gentleman that like he told me about what was happening with Major League Baseball and trying to play, not being able to play, and just all this crazy world that as a non-sports person I just would have never imagined, would have never had any idea. And that was one of the earlier ones. That was pretty soon after lockdown.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to him and just being blown away, just the weird micro ways in which COVID has affected such random industries.
Yeah. And I mean, you immediately think, oh, okay, COVID happened. We all need to be locked down. All these group activities that we normally do need to stop for a while. So, you think immediately concerts and sports events and everything. And you're like, talking to that guy, I was like, well, yeah, of course the sports industry is completely affected because like they can't play right now.
Yeah.
They can't have people in the stands. They can't do a game. And so it's like, well, with his particular portion of work, his was like, wasn't he in like recruiting or something?
It's been long enough now, I can't remember. And honestly, I don't think this gentleman watched our channel as much as his son did. So maybe if this person's son's watching, comment and let us know. But yeah, I believe he was probably, or maybe just in dealing with and taking care of new recruits.
Yeah.
Which is funny because that's kind of the thing, right? Like we all know COVID happened and we all know, oh, we're not going to a baseball game anytime soon. But
right.
Let's just be honest. Most of us don't immediately go, oh, what about all the baseball workers, right?
Yeah, like what about all the people who can't, they need the game in order to make the money to pay the people that
I'm trying to
do the game.
I'm trying to separate like, oh, I know obviously everyone's affected, but I'm trying to dive deeper with this conversation and just point out that like I am a person of moderate intelligence, and I can sit here and try to think of as many industries and people affected by COVID as I want, but I can spend all day on it, and I'm not going to think of a tenth of them, right?
Right.
Because the world's so massive. So my point is just me walking through this world, trying to outwardly trying to be an empathetic person and trying to have conversations with people. I'm just on a daily basis, like almost worn out by it because it's like, if someone wants to conversate with me in a grocery store, I will talk to you. COVID comes up, and man, I didn't know that. Man, that's crazy. And it's just every day. And I can think of a few more examples. I don't know how many of them I really need to get into to make this point, but I'm going to be very curious to hear from some of you guys watching. Just tell us something about how it affected you that might not be so obvious, right? Because a lot of stuff's obvious. People with kids not being able to go to school. Parts of this are obvious to a lot of people, but I think there's always person by person gonna be parts of it that aren't so obvious.
Like I wouldn't think that your industry would be affected because it's something that is very important to us, like, oh, that shut down, like, wow, like those kind of instances. Like I had one of our neighbors told us that his wife works in the medical industry.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I'm sure, I'll call her Jade.
Okay.
And I'm like, I'm sure Jade is definitely working. Like, I'm sure you guys are totally fine. He's like, no, actually, she is in anesthesiology. So there are no surgeries happening right now because the entire hospital is focused on COVID. So like she is out of work too. And it's like, are you kidding me?
Wow. Yeah.
Like, but people like need surgery still. It's just like everything was just
at that time,
halted.
everything halted.
It was wild. Like you wouldn't think anything in the medical industry would stop. But.
Yeah. Well, now that you say that, I think back a little bit, and yeah, like you couldn't go to the dentist for a while. You couldn't do the minor routine stuff that was in. That's really interesting to think about, and I think that's kind of what I'm searching after for people that might comment is just like. I'm not a person in the medical industry, so I don't know anything.
Right.
We know a little bit more, because your sister is, and we have
my mom in the dental industry.
Yeah, your mom was still working when COVID hit, correct?
Yeah. She had announced. She told her boss that she was going to retire in June.
Yeah.
Lockdown happened in February, and she's just like, no.
Yeah, so it kind of pushed her back a little bit.
Yeah. She still ended up getting to leave shortly after she originally planned, but she gave him like 6 months to find a new person, get them trained, and get them like really comfortable in the position before she left. And it was, 4 out of those 6 months it was lockdown.
Yeah, it's odd. There's been a lot of that too. A whole lot of conversations I've had with just random people that COVID hit at just the right time or wrong time, and it's usually just either or. Obviously, that was very frustrating for your mother.
Yeah,
it couldn't happen a couple months later, right after she retired. Wouldn't have made a difference. I mean, well, it would have, but I mean, she could have, she could have just been permanently retired all at once.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was also something for our specific situation. It kind of came at a very, very interesting, unique time as well, because I had literally just left my job like 2 weeks before.
Yeah. Well, and again, for you, I would say that's probably like a mostly positive. I mean, imagine it being a year prior. So the stuff we're talking about now was like a little less than a year ago now. So I'm talking being in that time frame and it being a year prior. So, almost 2 years ago now, when we weren't quite as well off financially, or we weren't quite as stable in what we're doing, and we hadn't figured out our path. And you losing your job at that point could have been. I think it would have worked out because, like a lot of people,
Yeah.
we would have been pushed into this.
Right.
But luckily for you, you got to make the choice.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Because like I left my job and we were able to kind of have a little bit of security and a little bit of time during the normal world to kind of set things up for us.
But it wasn't very long. It was just a few months.
Yeah. I feel like it was just a few weeks.
Yeah. My memory's not that great for amounts of time having passed, but yeah, it was not very long.
I kind of think of COVID lockdown as like end of February, but I guess for Phoenix it was a little bit later. We didn't really lock down until a little bit later.
Lots of the West out here kind of it was a domino effect across country.
Yeah.
But we were home in Kentucky in February when we heard the word
true.
COVID for the first time.
That's true, and I had left my job sometime in end of February. So
yeah,
you're
so
right.
we were back home and we were hearing about it. And we drove home, and honestly, we came home and got really, really sick. Probably the most sick I've been in 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I usually get a little bit like stuffy and like my cold
Allergies.
Yeah, it always happens every time we go back to Kentucky and come back home. I feel really sick, but I feel like that time it was
bad.
It was worse than it had ever been.
Yeah. And so we were one of those people that, and I think there's probably a lot of people watching, because I know at the time I was still on Facebook a lot. I've since quit the Facebook personally, but
Same.
I remember at the time just seeing a lot of people post around that time, or at least a little bit later once we knew about COVID and the reports that maybe it had been in America way earlier than we thought, and they were talking about the time frame, and me and thousands of others were like, we were really sick then. So,
yeah.
But we're sitting here pretty certain that we had probably had it at that point, because I mean we were so sick.
Yeah. I mean, you never get sick.
No, I mean almost at all.
I can remember one time you were sick. We were in college, and I think you just ate something bad or something. You got
Vitamin C.
Super sick for like one night, and you were fine the next day.
Vitamin C. Not sponsored, but I do highly recommend it with the high pulp.
Today's episode is sponsored by
It
Dallas's
is not.
addiction to orange juice.
I've had. Well, you know what? I've a little update for the pod here. I have quit caffeine and soda and all together.
Good for you.
We've been back from our trip for a little bit more than a week, I guess. I don't know how long. It might be 2 now. And I had a Coke. I had my last soda when we were with your mother, when we were eating dinner or something with your mother.
Oh,
and I haven't had one since.
Good for you.
Well, speaking of travel, we're talking about traveling during COVID. We traveled this time, and we tried to stay safe and healthy and stuff. But we're going to see family for the first real time since COVID. We've traveled home since COVID, but this is the first like vacation. Let's go do stuff with family and friends, and everyone's vaccinated. And the whole time we were home, the only way that I made it through this trip was I was just chugging the caffeine, man, because we left tired and beaten up.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I drank too much caffeine. And what really got me, we went to Holiday World, which this is a really important part of this conversation. Our first real time around huge, insane crowds.
Yeah, that's really true.
And
I thought about that while we were there too. I was like, I wasn't expecting to be in a big group of people like this in a long time.
Yeah, we were around a lot of people. Which I want to talk more about, but I brought it up really because Holiday World and Splash and Safari theme park in Santa Claus, Indiana, which is at the southernmost part of Indiana. Matter of fact, the park itself almost sits right on the river that divides parts of Kentucky and Indiana. I mean, it's very far south, so very probably 6 or 7 hours south of Indianapolis. It's almost more Kentucky than it is Indiana at that point because it's just so far south.
You sound so knowledgeable that it sounds like you're like a spokesperson for them.
Well, I'm from there, right? I'm
Yeah.
from there. I mean, I grew up right there, but it's a cool theme park. I just want to set that up for you. But the coolest thing about it is that it's free soft drinks.
And sunscreen.
And sunscreen all day, kiosks everywhere, whatever you want, help yourself. And it's been like that since I was a kid. I don't recall in my youngest years if it was like that or not, but as long as I can remember, this theme park had free soft drinks. And so we were there, and we were with a bunch of kids. We were with my childhood friends, and they all have kids. We don't, but they did. And I essentially spent that day at Holiday World babysitting them.
Yeah.
So it's high energy, chasing them around, piggyback rides, whatever. So I was slamming Cokes. I was just drinking as much caffeine as I could. And so really what it was that next day we went to your home. Mm-hmm. I started just feeling my heart was just like, you could almost feel it outside my chest, just punching. And it's just bad. It was just too much, all things in moderation. And I was not moderating myself.
Yeah, that's very true.
I'll be honest with you. I have a somewhat addictive personality. I mean, I like food and stuff, but it's not food as much as it is beverages. I mean, just soda, which is so funny to say because when we met in our earlier years, it wasn't soda. I just drank tea. I almost didn't drink soda at all.
Well, when we first met, you also really liked Diet Coke quite a bit.
But I liked it too much, right?
Yeah.
I was addicted to it through college. That's almost all I drank. We moved here to Phoenix, and less than a year into Phoenix, I quit. You remember? Mm-hmm. We were at a Hardee's Carl's Jr. here, and I was like, no more. I was like, this is the last one it was. I haven't had one since. But after that, I got back into drinking, because you like root beer a lot.
Yeah.
We share that interest, so we started drinking lots of root beers and stuff together, and it got out of hand. And I hadn't drank Coca-Cola regularly since well before I left home. So I'm 30. I'll be 32 in a month. September 5th, I'll be 32.
Yay!
I hadn't drank Coca-Cola regularly since 1920 at the latest when I lived at home. But for whatever reason, sometime earlier this year, I started drinking them, and I just love it. I love it so much. It's not even the taste; it's the way it feels, and it about killed me. So I brought this up because I want to talk about that, but also, I mean, there's more to say about Holiday World and it being really crowded. But I just want to let you guys know I'm drinking nothing but water and the occasional orange juice, and I'm gonna cut the orange juice. I'm just. I don't want to really say it's a real addiction, but it feels like it sometimes because of how she hears me say it all the time. And we were hanging out with our friends Ivan and Monique, and I just kept telling them that was the first few days that I hadn't drank any. I was like, I want nothing more than a Coke.
Yeah.
And we'd go eat, and they're like, "Aren't you gonna get one?" I was like, "No." I'm just miserable. But so I'm drinking a little orange juice here and there just to have something that's not water to wean myself off. But
well, also you have to drink a lot of orange juice because we went to the grocery store to go look for Yu-Gi-Oh cards
and Pokemans.
And you said, "I'm gonna get some orange juice," or "Do we have some at the house?" And I was like, honestly, I could not tell you. I have no idea if we have some at the house.
And I was certain we did.
He thought we did, and I was like, you know what? I don't know so much that I shouldn't weigh in on this at all. And so he's like, well, I guess we'll get some. And then they had a buy one, get one half off or something deal going on. And so I was like, well, you might as well get two because it's cheaper.
So we've had a refrigerator full of orange juice for
much
like
orange
a week.
Juice.
So I'm having plenty, but I'm going to quit it too and just do water for a good little while and ease back into some exercise. I mean, it's just, I honestly, I feel better. I've felt better this last few months physically than I have in many years because we're very active. Our daily vlogs got us in better shape. Yeah, I got a bit of a gut, but that's because I eat whatever the heck I want. But what we don't do enough of is get our heart rate up.
Yeah.
Right. There's just never time that passes that my heart rate, and I have a really solid heart rate too. So at least, I haven't had my heart rate and blood pressure checked in a while, but last time I did regularly, my standing heart rate would drop below 60, 58, is 58, 60, which is pretty crazy. So what I need to do is have some light jogs or some cycle riding or something to get it up there. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. But I will say, leaving home, driving 15 hours one day, 10 hours the next, going to Holiday World the next, spending the whole day with kids, it took caffeine to get me through it.
Yeah.
And it about killed me, and I stand before you a changed man. But how did all that go for you?
I mean, I didn't drink as much soda as you did, that's for sure. My biggest takeaway from all of that huge trip was when we were in college, it was my sophomore year, and I got an internship at PCPA Theater Fest in California. What's the town called?
Santa Maria.
Santa Maria. I was like, Santa Claus, California. In Santa Maria. And we did the drive to move there for the summer in one day. We did not stop. We just kept going, switched off drivers.
No, you're thinking, you're thinking the way back. On the way there, we stopped at Vegas.
That's true. That's true. We made a trip out of it on the way there. But yeah, on the way back, it was nonstop. We switched off drivers, and I felt like we were fine. I was like really impressed with it. I was like, everything's great.
We got back for a wedding. We went to a wedding the day we got back.
Yeah. And it was completely fine. The next time we did that big drive, we moved out to California permanently after college, and same deal. We drove straight through that, and we're like, it was difficult. We also had some car trouble, so there was a little bit of stress going on with it. And incrementally, every single time we've gone back, it's been harder and harder to do that. And so this time, I think if we hadn't stopped to hang out with Ivan and Monique, I don't think we could have done it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It just, I don't know. I turned 30, and it's a thing, right? Because I remember talking to my oldest brother, who's he's a morning coffee drinker. And I remember talking to him about it when he moved in with us, and he was just like, yeah, turned 30, need a little extra boost, and now it's just I can't do it without it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I got there a couple years ago. Well, a year and a half ago now, we got into doing our daily vlogs, and so I started drinking an iced coffee every morning, and I got to where I needed it. And as soon as I realized I needed it, I freaked out. I was like, I got to quit.
Yeah.
And it's so funny even now. You hear me talking about all this soda and stuff that I'm talking about and my kind of addiction to it. It's not the caffeine. Matter of fact, to be honest with you, I felt like this time 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't notice the effects of caffeine. I could drink a Coke and go to bed, and it was pretty much no problem. For me, it was just like, I just liked the way it felt going down, and I'm sure the caffeine did affect me, but that's not what my mind was on. So fast forward to now, now that I'm 30, like I can drink some, and I, for the first time in my life, really just go, oh, that's the caffeine kicking in. And now that that's the case, I don't want to need it, so I'm staying away. And I've had no caffeine in 2 weeks, and I haven't noticed. I don't wake up. I mean, you can attest to this. I don't wake up groggy. I wake up.
You never wake up groggy.
Yeah, I wake up ready to go.
You're a morning person.
Very much so. So I'd like to maintain that as long as possible. So I plan on, and you guys will just have to ask as future podcasts come out how I'm keeping up with it. But I don't know. My birthday is September 5th. And we might go hang out with some friends on my birthday. And if we do, I might allow myself a Coke or something.
Birthday Coke?
Yeah.
Coca-Cola, not, the other stuff.
Right. But I'm even, like, I'm not kidding you. I'm afraid to, because it's just a floodgates for me. Mm-hmm. I'll want one the next day. I'll be like, oh, what? So I may not even do that. But maybe.
I have two things that can relate to this story. One is like my addiction with caffeine. Like I had to cut it as well, and I did. When you brought up that time that you were drinking iced coffee every morning, that I was as well. And during that time, I felt like my anxiety was at an all-time high. Like I thought I was gonna die. Like my heart was racing so much, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't function. I just couldn't handle it anymore. And I was like, I think it might just be how much coffee I'm drinking, because I genuinely like the taste of it. I like all the fancy flavors and all that stuff. Like, we don't drink alcohol. We can go there next, but that's a huge difference between us. Like, I don't drink things because I like fancy flavors and stuff. I often like the way it feels, whereas like you'll drink coffee because it's some fancy stuff that you like the taste of. Yeah, I think it's really fun to throw all those different flavors in and do all that stuff. Like we don't drink alcohol, we don't do the fancy beers and the fancy drinks. Like that's just kind of my passion with beverages is coffee flavors. Mm-hmm. And it was a real bummer that I needed to cut it out, but it was getting to the point where it was very detrimental to my mental health and my physical health as well. So I cut that.
Well, it's funny. I mean, alcohol does the same thing. When you're 20 and in college and slamming beers all the time, it doesn't quite affect you as much as when you're 30.
Yeah.
I've heard this a million times. I'm sure plenty of people watching can attest. I don't have personal experience with that because I've never drank alcohol, which doesn't come up a lot. It's probably like the fourth or fifth time I've said it over the course of 700 videos, and it usually causes really interesting conversations, but that's really the big takeaway from it is, I didn't go through that. I didn't go through that change where, I can't do as many beers like a lot of people do. But I almost didn't go through it with coffee and others, with caffeine specifically, because I didn't drink coffee but maybe 3 or 4 times in my life at all until COVID or right before.
Yeah. During that time.
So
started drinking it all the
29, 30. But even then, it was because I'd never had iced coffee. And this place we were eating breakfast at every day had these iced coffees, and I loved them. Matter of fact, right now I can taste it. I like it so much, and I still would love to go every morning. But that's when I started feeling the effects for the first time.
Yeah.
And realizing that, I was being affected. So I'm going to quit. I'm going to try to go through my 30s entirely without all the bad stuff that I ate and drank through my 20s. That's kind of my plan right now.
My other thing that I was going to bring up that relates to the story is my addiction isn't necessarily beverages as much as it is just dessert.
Right.
I have such a bad sweet tooth. Like, you laugh because it's like, Hannah likes desserts.
Well, I laugh because I know.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with you with that, because I don't not like desserts, but like I don't have to have ice cream and cake and pies and all that.
It's like whenever we were growing up, my mom really liked cooking and she really liked baking as well. So we would have a nice meal for supper, and she would have cookies or a cake afterwards. And so it was this routine of like, eat your meal and then sit down and have some cake and then you're done. And so I've still carried that through my adulthood, and I'm like, okay, we had our chicken fingers at Raising Cane's, let's go get some ice cream to finish the meal. And so like it's to the point where I can't feel satisfied until I have something that's very sugary and very sweet, but I need to quit it. Like, I can't keep making the last thing that I eat right before like we wind down and go to bed something like a chocolate cupcake.
Yeah. and some people with, I would say, more self-control than us, but really it's just different for some people. Some people, their lack of self-control is shopping. Some of them it's eating. So, we all have a little something or other. We don't quite always control the best, urges, whether it be urges or, just behaviors. And I get it. I really do. Just because I can at least interpret your problem through the lens of mine. For me, I'm rolling down the road. Well, I've always been a just go getter. Let's go do this. Let's just go to 10 thrift stores. And for me, it's always just better if there's something just, it's like that's just, that's how it is for me. But you tell me, though, answer this question. What do you really think that the next 10 years you're going to be able to just not eat as much dessert like me? Are we going to be able to make it? Am I going to be able to do it without drinking Cokes? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, my positive thinking wants to say that, yeah, we can, but me knowing how I feel about it and how difficult, even like 2 days ago, I was like, I'm not going to eat any more dessert. I'm going to stop eating sugar after, 5 o'clock, like no more. That's got to end. And I did good the first day. I didn't eat anything with any kind of processed sugar in it. And then the next day we went to Walmart, and they have a little sales rack of all the bakery items that are marked down. And there was a $2 pumpkin pie. You saw it and you were like, oh, they have a $2 pumpkin pie. Should we get it? And I was like, yes.
Well, here's another important part of this conversation is like, I don't know. I don't have that problem. You can drink a Coke in front of me and be fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not an alcoholic. It's not that level. I mean, there's certain psychological aspects, preliminary psychological aspects you can compare it, but like the fallout of it isn't the same, right? So I can watch you drink a Coke and not have to have one.
Yeah.
I'd say it's a little less likely for you to watch me eat pie and not have some.
Well, and to kind of give you a little bit more light into my psyche on the situation, it was one of those really small ones. Like I will say, it wasn't a pie. It was like a pie.
Oh yeah, it was a piece each.
It was very small, but you were like, we might as well just finish this thing, right? It's so small. And I was like, no, I'm going to have one. I'm going to have a fourth of it, which is like a normal size piece.
Right.
And then you ate the half, like your half of it. And I was like, I'm going to eat one piece and I'm going to save the other piece for tomorrow. And then I did. I ate the one piece. I walked away from it. And then I went in my other room and I started sewing, and I had a terrible time sewing, and I was very frustrated. And I came into the room and I shoved that other piece in my mouth, and I don't regret it.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's all tough, but it's all, to be completely honest with you, and this is to bring the conversation full circle here. I was doing the best I ever had in my life with health and food and consumption prior to COVID. You go. I don't know how to tell you to find them, but just go back to our daily posts right to early February, and I was smaller than I'd ever been on this channel and feeling good and looking good. And but COVID hit, and we just had nothing to do but eat. And it gets away from you. People, it's tough to say these things on the internet. Even like, I don't often comment on other YouTube channels at all. I mean, almost at all. If I do, it's usually someone I know, like Ivan or Rick or something, and that's all of it. But for whatever reason, at a certain point post-COVID, Metal Jesus had posted a video about his health and stuff, and I just thought, I felt what he was saying, and I was like, man, in my head, I was like, I went through pretty much the same thing. So I commented, just some words of positivity, but just trying to empathize. I said something, I can't remember what I said now, but something to the effect of like, kind of the same for me. I was doing good before COVID hit, and I ate cookies the whole time, which was a joke, but it was kind of real because Hannah was like, well, COVID, I'm going to practice my baking.
Well, that's the thing about it, is like, I genuinely enjoy baking. I really find it therapeutic. It's something I can put everything away and just focus on that, and it makes me feel better.
Right.
But the thing with baking is that now you have a finished product
now you
of
gotta eat
sugary items. You have to eat it. And so, yeah, I coped with COVID and being stuck in the house by baking and honing some skills of things that I've wanted to learn how to make.
But that you have to do that with baking. You got to cook the same thing 5 days in a row, and you did, and then we tended to eat most of it. And so I basically, as thoughtfully as I could, responded thusly to Metal Jesus' video, and it was kind of hilarious. I didn't think anything else about it. I was just trying to be nice and add some positivity to someone's YouTube channel. And I don't know if you know this or not, but go to any major gaming channel in the world and read the comments, and you're going to find, I won't say most, but you will find an unfortunate amount of negativity. It's one of the reasons why our channel started as almost exclusively a gaming channel, but we very quickly got away from it. I just didn't like the energies that it invited.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of people will hear this and be like, oh, just do what you want. The comments don't matter.
Yeah.
It's a little different when you have a YouTube channel, because you hear all these YouTubers saying the word community, and most of us mean it. Most of us are trying to build something specific, and with a group of people to do things, and to it is a real thing. So unfortunately, some things that you can build community around might harbor too much negativity to really do it. But I'm telling you all this because it tickled me so much. Later that I put my phone down, we went and got to work, and I came back later that day and had all these notifications because so many people replied to my comment on Metal Jesus' video of me trying to be nice, just like, and it was all just the most like cliche stuff. When someone they're incredibly cliche, but they think that they just like hit it out of the park, like they're somehow
like they're enlightened and
insightful. Yeah. It was like, it's like, I can't even remember. I wish I didn't plan on talking about this. It just is what's come to mind, but like, so I don't have it prepared, but like, it was just all this like, well, no one's stopping you from going outside and running, cookie eater. Yeah. I don't know. Some of it,
you don't have to eat the cookies.
Right. Some of it was gotcha, but some of it was just like, it was just all this I don't know how to explain it to you. I wish I could because it was funny. It's at the end of the day, it's funny and it's not hurtful because it's just like you think you're being clever, you think you're smart, but you're not. And the point I'm getting at this is just like Metal Jesus, clearly a competent individual, but like the point is, you don't just like eat cookies and you're fat the next day.
Yeah.
I went into COVID incredibly healthy and feeling good. And it's not like I ate 40 cookies every day. That's not what happened. But I ate 3 or 4 here and 3 or 4 there. And by the time those couple months of doing nothing but staying at home and not even being sure if we were allowed to leave the house or not, because in certain areas it was kind of complicated. After all of it, I was clearly, at that point, I wasn't even like fat again or fatter. I was just on a path that was kind of hard to turn away from. And I think a lot of people watching will be able to empathize with that. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people just like those assholes in the comments that think they know better. They think they know how every human psyche works. But I'm honestly now, like I said, I feel better now physically than I did even before that COVID time because I've been very well exercised and I've been eating a lot better and stuff. So like I will say, for the first time now since pre-COVID, I'm back on the right path.
That's awesome. I mean, I feel the same for me. Mine wasn't so much physical as much mental. Like
Right.
I struggled a lot with anxiety and very. I'm not gonna go as far as to say depression, but like it was teetering toward that path.
I bet in the middle of COVID, for a lot of people that had ever sat on the edge of depression, got a lot closer than they ever probably thought they could.
Yeah, and I was definitely one of those people.
Yeah.
And so I know now, like getting out of it into the more of a normal world, and our business is able to thrive in a normal world again. Like I can feel myself getting a little bit better mentally.
Right.
So it's on a positive end. I also, cut coffee, so I can feel a little more of a normal heart rate.
Yeah. Well, you guys comment below. Did COVID create or enable any bad habits for you? Because I mean, I definitely think this. I like the idea of this podcast being a place that's kind of open for that kind of conversation because. It just is. It's a little bit difficult to talk about that kind of thing on the internet, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't say to like shield myself. Like if someone has something crappy to say it. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to set this umbrella up for others that know this to be true but want to talk about it anyways. We all have our own personal struggles. We all have our own bad habits. Mine's not cigarettes. It's just sugary drinks.
Mine's sugary foods.
And I don't know, maybe you could consider my Herbie hoarding a bad habit, but you can also unsubscribe and leave. But yeah, so back to the kind of the holiday world conversation.
Yes.
That first time being around that many people, I was not worried about it. It did not affect me, but I do know. I'm trying to think of how to say this. I don't want to say it the wrong way because I want to be truthful. You're not a people person in the same way that I am. And I definitely noticed you, and we have had discussions, so it's not like this is a secret or anything, but we've had discussions about just you getting back into public life now and people just kind of invading your space.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had a side conversation with your best friend's wife.
Okay.
About that specific thing. Like I noticed I was one of those people during COVID that really liked the bubble space. The like nobody else is going to be in the dish aisle because I'm in this dish aisle and I get to like take my time and like have this area to breathe. I realized how much I need that. I don't get me wrong. Like I love having conversations with complete strangers. I am a friendly person. I just really like that little bit of room.
Right.
Even standing in grocery store lines and stuff like that, if someone's standing a little bit too close behind me, I'm just like, I'm a little panicked. Like, can you please back up? Like, and so being at Holiday World like that, it was the first time I was thrust into a large
Thousands
crowd
of people.
again.
Thousands.
And I remember it kind of reminded me of this time whenever I was a kid. I went to my very first hockey game, and I went with my older sisters. And those, I don't know, you've been to a hockey game with me. You've been to the
Yeah,
specific
once.
arena that we were in. Those hallways, whenever you're trying to get to your seat, are just clogged with people. And I just felt so uncomfortable. Like, I felt like I was going to get separated from my sisters. I felt like I'm going to get lost. I felt like I'm never going to find them again. And it's just that panic of like, there's just this sea of people I'm never going to get out of, just really bogged me down. And I felt like that was my first time realizing that I have a problem with large crowds. And so being at Holiday World, it wasn't clogged with people like that situation was, but it was still a lot more people than I had ever been used to over the last year. And so, you'll be walking with your friends and then somebody will cut you off and then you get separated from the group and you're just like, I need to catch back up and I need to like get back to my people. And it was difficult to navigate. And then on top of it, you've got all these people who are like we're not doing the mask thing anymore. Everybody's supposed to be vaccinated, but I hope. And it's just, it was weird. But I don't say that to say that I had a bad time because of it. Like, it didn't bother me enough that I was like overly worried and like frustrated or like anything like that. I just, when I'm walking with a group of people, like, move out of the way. Let the group pass.
Yeah. Well, it's tough. I was way more worried about you than I was myself with that because that was our first real experience of being somewhere that was just crazy crowded with people. And I mean, it went all right. None of us had any nervous breakdowns being around people. But also, I think maybe 20,000 people, there was maybe one person with a mask on.
Yeah.
Like, it was not much at all. And so I was very curious how it was all going to go. But I must say, to really round this conversation out, it felt incredibly normal.
Yeah.
There was definitely none of us there living in fear of Corona or the Delta variant. Whether or not we should, you can certainly have an opinion, but it all felt really normal. And that really brings up the last question I have about the whole topic is, what will and won't go back to normal from where you're sitting? Whether it be what do you hope does? What do you hope doesn't? What do you think can? What do you think can't? You don't have to answer all those at once, but that's the mindset. That's what I really wanted to have this conversation for. Can we get our health back? I mean, there's obviously a huge chunk of this conversation today about our health, and I'm certainly trying to go back to my pre-COVID ways. But are Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh going to go back to their pre-COVID ways? And I'll talk about that in a bit. But how do you feel when asked that question? What can go back?
Well, I'll start with the thing that I am excited is back. One of our biggest routine things that we do is we wake up and go sit down at a restaurant and eat. And for a really long time, we weren't able to go into any kind of fast food restaurant and sit down and eat. And now things are coming back open and you're able to do that again. It's been a very nice thing to have back for our routine because it's just this moment for us to kind of start our day, get a breath, plan out what we're going to do, and then go do it. And so it's that I knew would eventually come back because, not every restaurant is going to do the drive-through thing forever. But I feel like it lasted a lot longer than I anticipated it. Yeah. I know, like, Chick-fil-A was the one that we kept saying, like, when is it going to open? When is it going to open? And I was like, I don't think they're ever going to do it. They're thriving on the drive-through. They're totally fine with it. But they did eventually open back up.
So but very recently.
Very recently.
Way closer to now than then.
Yeah. The one thing that I look at and go, this will never go back. It will always stay in this post-COVID world is the Goodwill bins.
Well, ours anyways.
Yeah. I mean, the other locations that we've been to since then have definitely gone back to their normal routines as we have noticed, as much as we can notice, as little as we've been there. But our Goodwill bins, I feel like, is going to be different.
Interesting.
Forever.
I'll be honest with you. I kind of hope not.
I do too. I hope not.
There's a lot of changes at our bins that, honestly, this whole trip that we just took kind of made it even more apparent to me that I wish our our Goodwill bins would go somewhat back towards its pre-COVID ways, but
Yeah.
because every bins we've been to otherwise has been completely normal, just not ours. That's a good one. Anything else that comes to mind, good or bad? I can think of a couple.
Well, maybe say yours, and it might jog my memory to a couple more of them.
Well,
'Cause I'm sure there are a few that I just can't think of.
Yeah, I wanted to speak specifically about hobbies because I know I kind of started this talk about it, but really, it's a tough conversation to have because I'm not just talking Pokemon. I'm not just talking Yu-Gi-Oh. Honestly, my biggest curiosity is just about hobbies specifically. And comment below, did you get into any hobbies during COVID because you had nothing else to do? And have you kept up with them? And will you? Will the world at large go back to focusing a little bit more on hobbies? Because I don't have any real statistics in front of you. I don't know how you could really gather these either, these kinds of statistics. But like, I would say there's millions in the U.S. more into hobbies than were before. I mean, at all. I don't know about you, but a lot of people I know just don't have hobbies. At least this is how it is back home, which is so odd to me because I am a serial hobbyist, you know, and I think a lot of you who orbit our channels on the regular probably know this about me, but I do. I love hobbies. I love learning new skills, and that's something I do quite regularly. But I want to know if that'll stick, or am I going to have a heyday with Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards this time next year because everyone that got back into it for a while was just like, nah.
Yeah.
It could happen. I mean, you really don't know. I definitely think there's some odd cases for some hobbies, like Pokemon's an odd one because it was already surging back in popularity to a new height it hadn't yet reached pre-COVID, and then COVID just sealed the deal.
Yeah.
So maybe that one's here to stay. But I don't know. And I ask these questions partially because I like people having hobbies. If I meet new people, I don't care about their job. I don't care about their usual day-to-day stuff. I mean, if they want to talk about that, fine. But I care a lot about whether or not they have what hobbies they're into and why. That's kind of what I more so care about. And so I'm really concerned, this extra cool thing I've had talking to all these people who've gotten into new hobbies. Is there going to be more of that or less of that over the next couple of years? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting.
That's
You're right. I feel like a lot of people, had the time to go ahead and venture into something new.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's the big one, and I could break it down past that, but I don't know. I'm wondering if I really want to know if anyone watching will kind of be honest about hobbies they've gotten into and stuck with or dropped. Because, I don't know. Let's be honest about you. You got into baking during COVID. You haven't really been baking since, which is kind of all right for me, but how do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, I was kind of reflecting on what my hobbies are. It was a lot easier for me to tell you what my hobbies were before we started reselling full time and doing the YouTube thing.
Right.
Because I feel like my hobbies my hobbies back then are what our job is now. And so I don't feel like I don't feel like I should call them hobbies anymore because they're our career, they're our job. So sewing would be one of them, thrifting would be one of them, but that's what I do for a living.
Right.
I do enjoy baking. I do enjoy cooking. So I guess those would be my next hobbies. But, I take a lot of time to do my work. So I don't have a lot of time to dedicate to any kind of hobby thing. My other thing is that I have hobbies is restoring Bratz dolls. That would be the other thing.
Right.
Which, again, I don't take a lot of time to do that. But every once in a while, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna set my stuff down and I'm going to just go through my dolls. So, but yeah, I feel like people had a lot of time during COVID. So yes, the hobbies were definitely a big deal and people were really spending a lot of time doing that. But as they get back to normal and have a normal life to, go to work and hang out with friends at bars and do the normal things that people do, I feel like you're right. Hobbies will probably start dwindling a little bit. Pokemon cards being the one that we've noticed the biggest effect from, but I'm sure there's other type of hobbies. Like I know during COVID, getting a package of yeast was impossible.
Yeah.
Like
well,
you can't find it.
at that point, it was just supply chain. It was like, everyone makes their product to sell. Well, not everyone. Food, it's a little bit different, but like, who knows how long back the Pokemon companies printed today's set. Like, I think as of shooting that, like, tomorrow's the new release for the new Pokemon expansion, I think. And I'm not even going to try it. I'm not going to rush out because my game stores are going to charge triple for it, and I'd have to go to dozens of Walmart to even try to find the new set. And, nobody really but the internal people at Pokemon know, do they do they want to print more to make the demand go down immediately, or are they trying to keep the hype? Who knows? And this differs from Pokemon down to Yu-Gi-Oh! Down to anything else like this with the yeast. That's not why. If they can sell more yeast, they're going to make more yeast.
Right. And it's not an issue anymore. It's
Yeah,
just everybody was like, I'm going to learn how to make bread.
Yeah,
So-
well, at this point, most of the food-related shortages and stuff are over, right?
Yeah, except for one, I have noticed. My mom was canning applesauce
Okay.
one day, like last month or so, and she said that the canning lids, the seal,
Specific to, like, mason jars, right?
yeah, those were impossible for her to find.
Interesting.
And I don't know if it was a COVID thing. I would imagine it may have had something to do with it. People just either were like, I have time to can something, let's can something, and they bought all of them, or maybe the companies that made those specific pieces needed to focus their attention on something else, or just, I don't know. It's very curious though. That was another thing that I noticed was supply chain issues.
Yeah. Well, that's really funny because that just brings up a whole nother point for this conversation that, like, at this point with stuff going crazy, what is COVID related and what is just like not even COVID related anymore, but just the strange new world that we wake up in, because the Pokemon conversation specifically has a lot to do with supply and demand, a little bit more than, there's probably not a lot of, like, I doubt Pokemon's having issue getting their hands on paper, cardboard, but they could. I
Yeah.
don't know, but then, like, those cans specifically, is that part of a metal shortage? And
Yeah.
you just don't know. And that brings us back to the point I made very early on in the episode. Every day that passes, I learn some new fact from some new person working in some new industry that I'm like, man, wouldn't have known that if I didn't talk to you.
Yeah.
Like your mom with those lids, we wouldn't have known that had she not brought it up. I mean, just what an odd, specific thing to not be able to find anywhere.
Yeah, for sure. And she said even on Amazon, because your first thought is always, well, why didn't you check Amazon? They'll have it. She's like, it was, I think, $15 for a package of 10 lids, whereas that is normally like $1 for a pack of 10 lids.
So
Like, she
the
was
price
like,
is way
Are you
up.
kidding me? I'm not paying $15 for that. That's stupid.
Yeah. No matter how bad you need them. And that was, at least right after COVID, that was my problem with Pokemon cards. I have no problem paying $30, $40 for a $30, $40 Elite Trainer box. But everyone that actually got their hands on them was charging $100. And it's
So
like,
crazy.
I like Pokemon cards, but not that much.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm very curious to see what goes back to normal. I think we'll have to have an update on this conversation just like a year from now. Because like today is, I think, technically the day of release for the new Yu-Gi-Oh set, and our Walmart actually had them, which was cool because since now for the first time since COVID, that's the first time I've went to Walmart on release, and there have been some for Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I think is the technical release for the new Pokemon. I don't know. I might be getting that wrong. You can Pokemon heads can let me know. But if it didn't already just pass, there's a new one coming out, and I'd bet $1 million it's not going to be at Walmart tomorrow. Matter of fact, because they only really restock once a week, and they just did it. So it's not. I think they went ahead and did it because they don't have them. They can't get their hands on enough of them.
So crazy.
And if you do get your every industry, every product manufacturer, when it comes to supply and demand, has its own kind of hard and soft rules about what you can and can't do. Like, with alcohols, there's a lot of documentaries, and heck, I've done some tours at bourbon places, and they kind of tell you, and I've heard people that have worked at different, what do you call an alcohol store? liquor store.
Yeah.
That's way better. People that work at liquor stores, if they get in a bottle of expensive stuff from the manufacturer, it's always curious, does that manufacturer demand you put some on your floor, or is it always up to the seller? And most of the time, it's up to the seller. Card shops are allowed to upcharge for market prices for Pokemon cards. And, Pappy Van Winkle and all that fancy bourbon stuff. Those stores are allowed to upcharge or put it, if they want to, put it on eBay. Sometimes there are random companies that will make rules and try to get their vendors not to do it. So real people like you and me have a chance. But I will say a lot of that stuff has become much worse than I'd ever seen it in before COVID times. And I'm curious if that'll all go back down. I'm curious if a year from now, every Walmart here will be fully stocked with Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Because before COVID, whatever pack that came out, whatever I wanted, I could very easily go to any Target and Walmart in town and pick them up. And now here we are a year later, and I'm lucky after going to 10 to find a pack.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. I mean, that's something that you noticed too while we were on the road, that you were able to go into Walmarts every once in a while and there'd be something on the shelf just because of, the demand was a little lower in smaller towns.
Small towns. And that's about the only way to do it. If I had to have a very specific bunch of cards right now, I'd probably drive 2 hours east of town and start looking at Walmarts around there.
Tell my mom to go to the Walmart in our town and we'll pay for shipping.
Yeah, hey, if you want, Mom, you want to buy me a birthday present, just buy all those Yu-Gi-Oh cards in your Walmart. But that was fun. That's a whole other conversation. We can talk about that, but let me button this up. In a year from now, will I go, oh, it's better because supply is more, demand is less? Because we could argue all day whether or not this is because, like the Pokemon cards, is it because the demand is higher or the supply is less or both? And honestly, the problem with COVID is that for so many industries, it's been both. Yeah.
I mean, what a weird time that the popularity soared at the same time that it made it more difficult for you to get. I mean, even with like the video game industry, Switches were impossible to get during
forever.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy a Switch in a store now, but for a while it's like that was impossible. There's no way.
And again, so many people buying them and upcharging them was a huge thing too. But I will say though, if you're at all interested in the Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh stuff I keep talking about, go take a trip cross country and stop at small town Walmarts. You can find a lot more. I found there's one place in New Mexico. We stopped middle of nowhere. I got some packs from last year. Now I did open them. I wanted them. I wanted cards from them, but it was a pack release last year, and those packs are going for almost $20, $25 sometimes on eBay right now. So
it's wild.
And they're $4 a piece. So I could have made a big profit on them, but it was my only chance to ever open those. It was the only chance I ever had, so I opened them.
Gonna be a scalper.
No, if that's what you do, fine. I don't care. I don't care, but I could have, I might have, but I wanted those. I wanted those bad. But yeah, it's a pretty good conversation. Again, I've said this a bunch, but I want to know from you guys how you feel about any of this stuff. Anything that you collect or buy, or anything hobby related that you're into that COVID affected in any ways, please comment it below. Just like I've pointed out several times in this conversation, I've been enlightened several times on other people's hobbies and industries. I'd love to know about yours. Maybe I'll be smarter for it. Any final thoughts before we wrap this episode up?
I mean, I guess one thing that I do kind of hope stays from COVID is that we all just kind of give each other a little bit more personal space.
And everyone washes their hands more.
Yes. Be a lot more clean. I wash my hands like 600 times a day. We went through so much hand soap during COVID, and it was so impossible to get hand soap.
Yeah.
It's very hard. But yeah, if you enjoy wearing the mask, keep wearing the mask. I don't mind wearing the mask in the winter. It's really awful in the summer. So
I hate every second of it. I'm on the polar end of that. It just makes me stuffy instantly. I'm happy for that to be gone. But if we're mandated to put them back on, I will comply. Yeah. We'll see how it goes, though.
It's funny with the mask. The thing that I liked the most is like there's a word for it. I guess the concealing portion of it. Like, I kind of liked that.
Everyone in public still knew who I was with a mask on. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, it's just like you didn't know what my mouth was doing. I could be standing there mouth breathing, or I could be, I don't have to.
Just for anyone wondering, this is what Hannah looks like under the mask.
Well, I don't know if this is specifically a Midwest thing, but I definitely realize that people in the Midwest do this a lot. But like the half smile thing, but it's not even a smile. It's more of a grimace. You know, when you look at somebody, you just go.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't have to do that anymore, and I know how stupid I look whenever I do it, so I shouldn't do it anymore. I don't know. I kind of enjoyed it.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with us. I hope you enjoyed the view of these Furbies on the table. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And most of all, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already. Maybe even do us a huge favor and share the link for this page to someone else so that they might enjoy some interesting conversations and very soon some live shows. We've got some of those coming up on this channel. So subscribe, make sure those notifications are on. Or if you think you're subscribed, go ahead and check that you are. And make sure that those notifications are on so you can come back for the next episode. And until then, guys, peace out.